Before we get into this video, I want to make a quick correction from my last video. It was pointed out to me that Swamp Buggy Racing and Sprint Car Racing did not use the Totem Tech engine, they used the Libsys engine. In fact, it seems like the first game to use Totem Tech officially was Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. I still personally believe that Monster Force used Totem Tech as well. Apparently Tony Salvaggio has said somewhere that Monster Force used the Nightmare Creatures engine. But like, if you look at the character models, they look just like the kind of thing you would see in Revenge of the Flying Dutchman or Jimmy Neutron. Basically, the whole point of this update is just to say that some of the information that I presented as fact is a little bit more muddy than I had initially known about. I'm thinking that after this series is done, I'll make a supercut of it with everything all together, where I also go back and correct any more mistakes that I've made. But I just thought it was important to let you guys know about that before we dive in. Anyways, let's get into it. Unfortunately, the original demo that Callisto Entertainment USA made to pitch their version of a SpongeBob game seems to be all but lost to time. I know for a fact that there's a copy that does exist. However, I was last told that it's unsalvageable due to the condition of the disc. Whether that is actually true or I was lied to, frankly, I can't say. Luckily though, several screenshots of the exact same build running in the Totem Tech engine have been uncovered that paint a pretty clear picture of how it played, and how bizarre it was. So here we are with our Bikini Bottom pals in front of Squidward and Patrick's houses, and right away, there's a lot to address. For one, each character stands motionless, lifeless. Their cold, dead eyes burrow into the soul and see your deepest fears. Okay, but seriously, if you thought Revenge of the Flying Dutchman was surreal and creepy, it's got nothing on Tech Demo Patrick. When I first saw this image years ago, I immediately pictured a creepypasta where some child finds the unmarked hard copy of this demo at a Goodwill and proceeds to be terrorized by Patrick.exe. Plankton stands next to Squidward, and he seems much bigger than he's supposed to be. At first glance, it appears that he's standing over the treasure chest in the foreground, looking shocked and amazed by whatever's inside, but from what I can tell, this is actually just an illusion created by the angle of the shot. What this treasure chest is for is unclear, but we'll come back to that shortly. The lighting of the whole area certainly doesn't help assuage the analog horror vibes, but that could just be the fact that these screenshots are all in black and white and have gone through like 3 tiers of document scanning. For some reason, there's a spotlight effect over Squidward specifically. I initially wondered if this was a way to highlight a character SpongeBob could be interacting with, but based on later images, this lighting appears permanently affixed to this one spot. If I had to guess, this is probably to show off the lighting effects that Totem Tech was capable of. One thing that really caught me off guard is the bundle of bamboo shoots sticking out from the sides of Squidward's home. Initially, I couldn't even tell what these were actually supposed to be. I thought maybe it was somehow grass or seaweed from behind the tiki head, representing the garden that exists in the final game, but no, it's bamboo. This seemed like a really bizarre inclusion at first. Why would this be here? As far as I could recall, this was never in the show, was it? Well, a few weeks after I first noticed this detail, I just so happened to be looking through early development materials for the cartoon itself, when I noticed that this bamboo is featured in Steven Hillenburg's early concept art. I later learned that it was also in the cartoon pilot, so I guess you all have free reign to call me a fake fan. Lastly, you may also notice the mysterious floating orb above Squidward's right arm. If we move on to another shot, we get a clearer look at the same spheres. I spent such a long time trying to theorize about what these things could be over on the other channel that I do with my friend Chester Liddon, Bikini Bottom Inquirer, but the conclusion that I've reached now is that these are likely an early version of a bubble particle effect. My initial theory was that it was a collectible of some kind, but that doesn't really seem to make sense when looking at the rest of the screenshots. Here we also get a good look at SpongeBob's pineapple, which looks like an immaculate sketch I once did of the sponge himself. The pineapple's door seems oversized, the window positions don't look quite right, and the fronds on top look more like the hair of the world's deadliest troll doll than the leaves we have come to expect. Off to the left, you'll see what appears to be a Krabby Patty collectible, which makes sense given the giant Krabby Patty counter that I failed to mention in the first image. Up above the patty, Patrick's rock is bald, as it doesn't appear to have its signature TV antenna. This exclusion makes it look rather dull, just a big gray blob sticking out of the ground. In front of SpongeBob's house, we get a side view of Gary and Mr. Krabs, and the next picture gives us a clear look at these models. Honestly, there's not too much to point out here, except of course what looks like an oddly tiny version of the classic car muffler houses behind them. It's also worth mentioning that Mr. Krabs looks almost exactly like the final version of the model that they ended up using, besides some very minor edits. There's also part of another orb up to the left, and something is cut off to the right, but I have no clue what it could be. The barren wasteland on the horizon continues to make this whole world unnerving. This next image doesn't show us much more than we've already seen, but we get a slightly clearer view of Patrick's antennaless rock, and we see a single frame of SpongeBob's walk cycle. There's also an even tinier house to the left of Patrick. Why are these here? Did they not understand what these were supposed to be? Next up, we see SpongeBob in action, doing some platforming across cylindrical towers. SpongeBob's model is clearly a lot bendier and kind of rubber hose-esque than the later, oddly stiff version is. We also see some more patties scattered around, and a couple of floating orbs that almost appear smaller than the others. And now we get our best look at what seems to be the entire level. Unfortunately for Squidward, someone has apparently cut his house in half and removed the back entirely. If you need further proof, it's pretty clear that his house is just the front side in this previous image. It's probably safe to assume that the pineapple and rock are halved as well, but we never see them from an angle where we could say for sure. The treasure chest we saw before is closed in this image, so perhaps the ultimate goal of the demo is to unlock it by collecting so many patties or completing some other task. The cubes in the foreground seem like they're floating to the left of Patrick's rock, but like most things we've looked at so far, their purpose isn't entirely clear. Looking at them from this perspective, I would guess that they are platforms, though they could just as likely be an element from the development engine that we don't see during gameplay. When I thought the orbs were a collectible, I assumed that the boxes were somehow used to reach the wand high up above the characters. Now let's briefly touch on these orbs again, since we see them in a majority of the pictures. As I said prior, I'm 99% sure they are bubbles for an early version of a particle effect. I was outright told by designer Jeremy Arnson that he thinks, quote, the orb things were the start of the particle system to add into the special effects later, unquote. Part of me was skeptical, as to me, they looked a bit weird for a typical particle effect, and I didn't show him the screenshots during our interview, so he was speaking purely from memory. When you take a moment to think about it though, it makes the most sense. These floating spheres seem to be transparent, and their size and locations don't appear consistent throughout any of the images. Before moving on to the next shot, I want to discuss another gameplay element that is supposed to be present here. In my 2019 interview with Matt Scabilia, he told me that the demo they created included, quote, SpongeBob, Patrick, Sandy, and Squidward animated models, and a bit of jellyfishing gameplay, unquote. Now, it's possible that this quote was entirely inaccurate, and the years had slowly blurred his memory. That was clearly the case with some of that quote, since none of the NPC models appear to animate and are purely static. Additionally, Sandy is nowhere in sight. I suppose she could be hidden somewhere, but we don't see her in any of the images, so her inclusion was likely a false memory on the part of Matt, at least in my opinion. But what about the jellyfishing gameplay? Well, Matt wasn't the only one to tell me about this mechanic.
It had the jellyfishing costume and animations, but the jellyfish being collected was simply turning off the character. No particle effects or anything. Jeremy Arnson, Who Needs Normal, 2024.
I see no signs of the jellyfishing gear costume or any kind of changing tent, but if we peer down to the bottom left corner, we do see an oversized static jellyfish model. There don't appear to be any other jellyfish outside of this one, but maybe there are some hidden out in the distance, or maybe there was only ever just the one. Even though we never see SpongeBob wearing the jellyfishing gear in these screenshots, that doesn't mean it wasn't there. In fact, there's a grainy floating object in the distance that looks to me like it could potentially be a hastily modeled net waiting to be collected. There's a line of pixels that seems stick-like and appears to be thinner than the nearby platform with what I believe is a tower of Krabby Patties, and the blob at the end of the stick doesn't bear much resemblance to the bubbles. This leads me to believe it's something else entirely, and from this angle, it looks as though it's connected to the stick. Below the potential jellyfishing net, we see those pillars that SpongeBob was jumping on before. It appears that they lead out to another series of platforms that then lead out farther to the right of the map. We never get a good look at anything that's out in this area, which is unfortunate since it very well could contain the meat of the actual gameplay. The only thing that's even possible to make out is what appears to be a second Mr. Krabs and Patrick model standing out in the distance, and that's confirmed by the following two images. Why are they out here? Well, Patrick is probably plotting his escape to the real world. But perhaps the Mr. Krabs model serves as a taskmaster, instructing you to collect so many Krabby Patties to open the treasure chest or something. Why the original models back on Conch Street couldn't do that is anyone's guess. The only other screenshot I have just shows SpongeBob walking across the polygonal environment. Not terribly interesting, so I guess I saved the worst for last. All in all, this demo, by all appearances, was strange, barren, and a bit surreal, but I can see why something like this being built in only 2 weeks would have impressed the powers that be. I know that I desperately hope it surfaces someday so that we can understand it better and fully document it. For now though, it will remain an obscure piece of lost media that will sadly probably be forgotten. While the demo was meant more to show off what Totem Tech was capable of, the coinciding document fleshed out the design team's ideas for the finished product they hope to create. Their vision for the first 3D SpongeBob game would be a PS2 and GameCube experience that was like, quote, Crash Bandicoot meets Ape Escape, unquote. Though in later documents, they likened it to Super Mario 64 meets Ape Escape, and then Super Mario 64 meets Spyro. None of these are perfect reflections of what their game would become, of course.
The player will be challenged to guide SpongeBob through the fully interactive, wacky environments of Bikini Bottom, helping his friends, antagonizing his neighbors, jumping across platforms, running from undersea terrors, chasing down jellyfish, and cooking Krabby Patties. The game will also feature interactive storytelling seamlessly inside the game environment, and a multiplayer mode to deepen and extend the game experience as well as increase the title's replayability.
Callisto USA wanted to adapt every aspect of the cartoon into their game that they possibly could, from the art style and humor to the animations themselves.
The game will naturally adopt the look and feel of the 2D cartoon, recreated in 3D and mimicking the art style, character models, color palettes, and animation. We will pull as much fiction and content from the cartoon as we can to enrich the game, story, and characters with the same wacky, off-the-wall humor. In order to maintain the illusion of interiors that are much larger on the inside than they appear on the outside, we will use a fade or screen wipe effect to transition between exterior and interior locations. As so much of his personality is communicated via SpongeBob's facial expressions, it is vital that the game allows for his face to be seen frequently. This will be accomplished in 2 ways. 1. The camera and control system will give the player direct control over SpongeBob so that he can face the screen at any time. 2. The animation system will allow for SpongeBob to do a number of idle animations should the player leave him still for a few moments. There will be the opportunity for SpongeBob to turn and face the screen and act out his signature zany manner. It would really push it over the top to have access to as much authentic or even new SpongeBob audio as possible, including sound effects, voiceover, dialogue, and music.
While I was told by Matt Scabilia in previous interviews that many of the members of the development team were quote-unquote big fans of the show, there are some clear inconsistencies in this document that prove not everyone coming up with the ideas were avid watchers.
The game will take place in Bikini Bottom, the undersea world of the SpongeBob cartoon. Locations will include all of the familiar places such as SpongeBob's pineapple home and his neighbor's pads, hangouts like the Crab Shack and Chum Bucket, and areas like the Jellyfish Fields and Hooky Carnival.
There are multiple instances throughout Callisto's planning that refer to the Krusty Krab as the quote-unquote Crab Shack. And here in a bit, you'll see that they call Mr. Krabs himself Mr. Crab. In other areas though, this is corrected to the proper names. This inconsistency was likely due to the somewhat chaotic creative process that was employed while writing all of these ideas out. One person would work on one section, while someone else did another. It was messy, and this issue would continue to cause problems throughout the rest of the dev cycle.
Like the cartoon, the game will take place underwater and preserve the humorous properties and representation of water in SpongeBob, meaning it will include campfires, fireworks, and other such aquatic absurdities presented in real-time 3D. The level environments will consist of a combination of exterior and interior scenes, with a focus on the outside areas.
Callisto decided that they didn't want this game to be tied down to one idea or one story, as the SpongeBob cartoon itself didn't play by those rules week to week.
Inspired by the episodic nature of the cartoon series, the levels will be structured in a similarly episodic fashion, and each of the levels will use an episode as its creative theme to define its location, goals, and interactions. Rather than focus on a single villain, global conflict, and final resolution, this game will be presented as a collection of adventures. Like episodes, the theme and goal of each level may be very different from any other, but they will all keep within the established fiction and gameplay. There will be a broad range of level goals, immediate and long-term, themes, conflicts, and villains, including scenarios centered on SpongeBob and his misadventures with Squidward, Plankton, Mr. Crab, and other friends and neighbors.
The stories for the various levels, or episodes, at this stage were ripped straight from the earliest season of the show itself. Specifically, they used the plot of the show's pilot as an example of a possible idea, though my guess is this was only ever an example and likely wouldn't have been implemented.
In each level/episode, SpongeBob will meet up with one of the cast and be asked to complete a number of different tasks in order to acquire access to the next area. So, one example would be centered on SpongeBob's goal to get a job at the Krusty Krab. But before Mr. Krab will hire him, SpongeBob needs to retrieve the three-way spatula from the cave at the edge of Jellyfish Fields. So, SpongeBob would set off for Jellyfish Fields to track down the special spatula, and once he has completed the task of retrieving the spatula, he may return to see Mr. Krab about getting that job and playing in a new level/episode.
Eventually, these episodes would somehow tie together into one larger cohesive plot.
The overall story will begin with smaller, more immediate goals that are easily achievable, but there will also be references to a larger goal that will be revealed slowly as the game progresses. As SpongeBob meets up with his various friends and journeys through the different areas of Bikini Bottom, he will acquire new props along the way, giving him new actions and abilities.
They wanted the player's actions and the choices that SpongeBob makes when interacting with other characters or the environment to be impactful and affect the in-game world around them. The original ideas for SpongeBob's in-game abilities were going to be much more unique to a given scenario.
Double jump/float. When the player presses jump again while in the air, SpongeBob will do a sponge puff expand and gently float his way down for a soft landing and some extra jump distance. Karate chop. This will be SpongeBob's main offensive move when he is not using or carrying any interactive props. A quick button press will deliver a quick hi-ya chop in the direction SpongeBob is facing. Absorb and spray. SpongeBob will have the ability to absorb certain liquids into his porous skin and then release the liquid as a game action. Some things he could absorb would be Krabby Patty special sauce, heavy water, or even octopus/squid ink. Sponge slide. In some tight corners, SpongeBob will need to use his sponge slide ability, which allows him to slide short distances along his flat, spongy self. Ripping pants. SpongeBob will be able to rip his pants from time to time in order to crack up and distract any on-screen characters. Nose flute. Like the Pied Piper, SpongeBob will learn how to play a tune on his nose, enabling him to lure jellyfish, distract enemies, open doors, and more. Ah yes, exactly as the Pied Piper did.
Outside of these inherent abilities, there was also meant to be a number of items or power-ups that SpongeBob could use in certain situations.
Throughout the game, SpongeBob will come across a number of different objects that he can use for various interactions, such as defeating enemies, changing and/or navigating the environment, powering up and collecting objects. Below is a list of some of the props and how SpongeBob will play with them. Fishnet, used to catch jellyfish. Spatula, used to swat his enemies and to flip/serve Krabby Patties. Leaf blower/vacuum has two modes, suck and spew. used to blow away enemies and to pick up, carry, and spew an object or enemy from one location to another. Bubble Blower, used to trap enemies/objects in a floating bubble, allowing SpongeBob to take his time in deciding what to do next. Silent Shoes, used to sneak quietly through an area when his normal squeaky shoes would give him away. Sparring Pads, allow SpongeBob to take more hits from hostile enemies or the environment without losing a life. Water Balls, a heavy ball water projectile that splats on contact, used to defeat enemies from long range. Bulky/strong arms, allows him to lift heavy things and/or throw them far like in the anchor toss. Fishbowl Helmet, obtained from Sandy, it enables SpongeBob to easily survive and monitor his water levels while on land or in dry air.
The cast of characters throughout the game was originally going to use several more familiar faces from the show than we would eventually see in the final release.
Patrick Star, SpongeBob's best friend. Patrick will appear frequently throughout the game, serving as a gameplay instructor and taskmaster. Sandy Cheeks, SpongeBob's girlfriend. Sandy will also serve as a gameplay instructor and taskmaster. Squidward, SpongeBob's neighbor and antagonist. Squidward will be used as the source of a number of the conflicts that SpongeBob must resolve. Mr. Crab, SpongeBob's boss. Mr. Crab will serve as a taskmaster. Plankton, Mr. Krabs' arch rival. Plankton will be used as the source of a number of the conflicts that SpongeBob must resolve. Others like Gary, Mermaid Man, Barnacle Boy, Neptune, and Satan will also make a significant appearance during the game. What the f***?
I'm sorry, Satan? Satan? You mean to tell me that the best SpongeBob character, Satan himself, was meant to be in this game?
Oh, you know, just the cast of SpongeBob. Plankton, Mr. Krabs, Sandy,
Satan,
Patrick. We've all seen it. We've all seen the episodes.
I have no soul.
So after looking at other documents that you'll see later in this series, my best guess is that Satan is actually in reference to the Flying Dutchman. Probably. How anyone confused him for Lucifer is beyond me.
Callisto proposes the following game objects that will serve as collectibles, placed around each of the levels, and interactive power-ups that can affect the player character and gameplay. Jellyfish could have different values and be used for a recurring collectible. These should be easily identifiable by number of stingers, colour, and appearance. I hate Callisto. Krabby Patties and/or kelp candy bars for health. Spell SpongeBob in spongy letters while in each level. The mythical golden spatula, retrieved from the Fry Cook Hall of Fame, could make the player invulnerable for a period of time. Square Sneakers makes him run super fast.
Similar to another Nickelodeon game being worked on around that time, Rugrats Royal Ransom, Callisto wanted to take aspects of the single-player campaign and turn them into unlockable multiplayer experiences to play with friends and family.
Many of the action levels will contain mini-games that will be available for multiplayer play. These games will be introduced in single-player action levels, complete with AI so that they demonstrate how the multiplayer versions work. Once unlocked and available outside the single-player game mode, between 2 players and 4 players will be able to complete with each other or against the AI in any of the minigames.
If you've played the finished game they eventually released, then in all likelihood you'll remember the karate matches with Sandy and Larry. These are almost certainly an example of a minigame that was meant to be played together. Somehow, I don't think we missed out that much. While the ideas would later be reworked and refined, these were the earliest incarnations of the planned levels and scenarios.
Tree Dome. SpongeBob will journey to visit Sandy at her dome home. Ideas for gameplay in this level include the need for water in the dry air currents that make the player float or fly, and collecting items for Sandy's tea party. SpongeBob will have to watch out for gusting air vents and pecking birds as he treks through the dome. Hooky. SpongeBob will ride fishing hooks up to collect things up top and gain access to areas unavailable by jumping, similar to the air currents from the tree dome. The user will then parachute down from the top area to the sandy bottom. He will also have to know which hooks not to take. Crab Shack. SpongeBob will have some basic training to do at the beginning of the game, and so he will begin his lessons at work, flipping Krabby Patties, serving customers in time, stopping Plankton from making off with the recipe, and earning his golden spatula and Employee of the Month statues. He'll need to be fast on his feet when the lunch rush of anchovies arrives. Muscle Beach. SpongeBob will try to gain Sandy's favour by outdoing the Beefcake's display of great strength. We will try to include the humour of the ripped pants and undies as SpongeBob and the Muscleheads compete with ever-increasing displays of strength. Karate choppers. SpongeBob must fend off Sandy's barrage of karate attacks while navigating a treacherous environment. Pow! Wham! Jellyfish fields. SpongeBob will have to collect a certain number of jellies within a set time. This is a global level mechanic and will also likely appear as its own minigame. Plankton. SpongeBob must retrieve the recipe for Krabby Patties that has been stolen by Plankton. With a chance to explore the chum bucket, the player could run into the secret ingredient analyzer for some laughs. Treasure hunt. SpongeBob will go hunting for lost treasure at the far reaches of Bikini Bottom. Boating school. SpongeBob will complete a brief training before beginning the boating exercise, and then he will have to pass the exam on a closed course. Tide pools. As in the Treetop Dome, the user will be constrained by water and air as they venture up a beach, going from tide pool to tide pool, scouring for ingredients to Mr. Krabs' Krabby Patties special sauce.
Overall, Callisto believed that Totem Tech would allow them to turn this project into the definition of an interactive cartoon, with models that utilized squash and stretch animations that felt alive. They hoped that they could create authentic sound effects and record brand new dialogue with all of the actors to build a game that was as true to the source material as it possibly could be.
Developed by Callisto at its Austin studio, the team would likely be staffed with the following key personnel: Stretch Williams, executive producer; Anthony Marone, technical director; Lyle Hall, creative director; Matt Skibilia, art director; Jeremy Artson, lead level designer; Mike Bowman, senior programmer; Jeanette O, 3D level artist; Tony Salvaggio, 3D animator/modeler.
Lyle Hall's role as creative director of the game is fascinating, given his existing resume in the present. I couldn't say for sure which ideas in this document and the later ones are his, and he was rarely at the main office in Austin to collaborate directly, but it's clear he had at least some impact on what this game became. So when criticizing Revenge of the Flying Dutchman and praising Battle for Bikini Bottom, just remember, the same guy technically had a hand in both.
I'm now going to do these names correctly. Stretch Williams, executive producer; Yanni Moran, technical director; Leroy, creative director; Mr. Bill, art director; Jimmy, lead level director; Mike Beam, Janet O, 3D level artist; Tony Savile.
Callisto USA presented their ideas to THQ at GDC 2001, and the powers that be were apparently impressed with the results.
We proved we had the talent, vision, and technology to realize the client's franchise. Although this put us on the list of potential developers of SpongeBob, it was through extensive negotiations and immediate responsiveness to the client's revisions that eventually won the contract for our team. Matt Skibilia, GIGnews.com, July 2002.
The deal for SpongeBob was closed around March to April of 2001, and their former Origin coworker Billy Kane would return soon after and join Callisto USA. Billy would serve as the lead producer for the SpongeBob project and was instrumental in the entire development cycle going forward. Getting to work with the SpongeBob SquarePants property was a huge win for the team in Austin and should have been their ticket to massive success. However, this project would prove to be their most turbulent yet, and nothing would go according to plan.